Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. Today's show is brought to you by Feastbox. Check out CougarFeast.com and get your Cougar Feast box ordered. It's not too late to get your box. Before the Sam Houston game, what will happen? There's sizes for 6 people, for 12 people. You'll get a pair of proteins, you'll get sides, you'll get appetizers, and you'll get a little bit of BYU swag, all packaged up in a dope little box, shipped directly to your door. It's delicious. The food really is fantastic. And again, when I look like this, you take my opinion. You don't listen to skinny people talk about food. You listen to people who look like me talk about food. And Feastbox, it is really, really good. So check it out, CougarFeast.com, and don't forget to order your box today. It directly supports BYU athletes, and 10% of everything that gets sold gets donated to the Full of Hope campaign, where Feastbox is out there trying to feed the hungry. So really great causes all the way around. Great food, great benefit for you. Check it out, CougarFeast.com. Today, we continue our discussion about previewing BYU's opening game against Sam Houston State. Yesterday, we did our SWOT analysis of BYU's defense against Sam Houston State's offense. Now, we're going to flip the script. We're going to look at BYU's offense as it relates to Sam Houston's defense. So let's get into the SWOT analysis. Here we go. Strengths. There's so many strengths for BYU. Offensively, this is really, before we get into the details, BYU has advantages across the board on offense. This should be a game that Aaron Roderick and his squad are able to do what they want on their side of the ball. So specifically, there is experience at every position for BYU. When you really look through quarterback, right? I get that Keaton Slovis is new for BYU, but he's got 10,000 career passing yards. He's seen it all. Aiden Robbins has seen it all. The offensive line has seen it all. The wide receivers, even the most, the least experienced group of the team has guys like Chase Roberts, Cody Epps, Keanu Hill. They've been around for a while. They know what this is all about. Keelan Marion, Darius Lassiter, while they're new to this level of football, they've seen a ton of football. BYU has experience across the board. That experience is an absolute strength for BYU. Size. BYU's a big team. I don't know if we take that into account. I think we kind of take it for granted most of the time. But when you look at this offensive line, everybody's 6'6", 6'7", 310, 315 pounds. They're super athletic, but they're big. Part of the ascension in the last 4 or 5 years of BYU's offensive line has also had a direct correlation with the size of the offensive line. They're getting bigger and they're getting better. That's not by mistake. BYU has a distinct size advantage in this game. And then Aaron Roderick. I think Aaron Roderick at this point, he has proven that he is an unquestioned strength for this BYU team. His ability to come up with game plans that are simple enough for anybody to execute, but are difficult enough to defend, that BYU is able to sustain long drives and have offensive success almost every game, year in, year out. Aaron Roderick is an absolute strength as the offensive coordinator. Now, some weaknesses. What's the injury situation? We look at the depth chart for the wide receiver position. Every single guy listed on that depth chart has an or next to his name. Now, could we make an argument that maybe Fesi Satake, the wide receivers coach, passing game coordinator, maybe he's trying to motivate guys, and so he's putting ors next to everybody to say that, hey, positions aren't locked down? Sure, you could argue that. You could also argue that maybe there's been some injuries throughout fall camp with guys like Chase Roberts, Cody Epps, Keanu Hill, and maybe there's some questions about whether or not they're going to be ready to play on Saturday, and that's why the depth chart is as fluid as it is. We don't know. BYU's not going to confirm anything about injuries until they absolutely have to, but something to kind of pay attention to. That was a weird event, a weird happening with the depth chart that every wide receiver had an or next to his name. Something to monitor going into Saturday night. Weaknesses. Pitt Slovis still happened. While I think that Slovis, and I think most people agree, most BYU fans at least agree, that Keaton Slovis is ready to take a step forward and put the Pitt era behind him, and I think he has the talent to do so, it still happened. And if that's the Slovis that BYU gets, the Slovis that was there at Pittsburgh last year, then a lot of the aspirations, a lot of the goals, and a lot of the talk about maybe 6, 7, 8 wins for BYU, that all kind of goes out the window unless Slovis takes a big step forwards. And Pitt Slovis still happened. It's still something that until it's not a problem, it's going to linger in the back of my head that maybe is a problem. And then finally, the chemistry. There's so many new faces across the offensive line, new faces at the wide receiver room. The running back room is nearly all transfers. Obviously, Slovis is new. They've had time to come together, and it really seems like the chemistry and that Kalani Sitake's culture in the locker room has brought these guys together really, really quickly. But we haven't seen it in game action yet. So what does that chemistry look like? It's kind of like an all-star team. There are teammates, there are players that are coming from all across the country, and this is the first time against an opponent that they're all going to have to come together and play as one. So until that is a strength, right now I think you have to consider that chemistry a little bit of a weakness just because it's an unknown. So opportunities, let's get into where I think the BYU offense can have success. The Sam Houston secondary, it's not great. They're relying on transfers themselves. They brought in some JUCO guys. Their best players from a year ago are no longer there. BYU will have an opportunity to attack this defensive secondary through the air. There's no question in my mind that is the biggest area where Sam Houston State is susceptible. And fortunately for BYU, that's generally where Aaron Roderick likes to go under the best of circumstances. BYU's passing game is elite. It has been elite for every year under Aaron Roderick, and they're hoping that Slovis can continue that trend. I would expect BYU to take shots early and often to really put this Sam Houston State secondary to the test. Another advantage, another opportunity. Second half, it's a late night game for Sam Houston. It is at altitude. It's going to be a ruckus environment at LaVell Edwards Stadium. I mean, that's an advantage. That's an opportunity. BYU can really rely on a run game, bleed the clock, and just physically overpower this Sam Houston State defense late in the game. That's what LaVell Edwards Stadium has become known for. That's what playing at altitude has done to teams that are far more talented than Sam Houston State is. Absolutely an opportunity for BYU. Spread things out in the first half, get everybody a little bit tired, and then late in the game, you just pound the rock with that big offensive line and with Aiden Robbins. And look, the hungry home crowd, this crowd wants to get behind this team. They always do, but this is a different element, a different era of BYU fans. The Big 12, it's been like a B12 shot for every BYU fan in the world. Everybody is happy. Everybody is excited for this season. I'm expecting an already crazy environment at LaVell Edwards Stadium to be infinitely more crazy now that BYU is in the Big 12. Even if it's just a game against Sam Houston State, LaVell Edwards Stadium is going to be crazy on Saturday night. Huge opportunity for BYU to hit on a few big plays and really ride the energy of that crowd throughout the game. Now, there are some threats. The Bearcats, they've got nothing to lose at all. Nobody's expecting them to win this game. It's their first year at FBS. They're on the road playing against a Big 12 team. This team can play loose. They can play free because the absolute worst thing that can happen to them is they get blown out. And most people are expecting them to get blown out. So they'll be able to play loose. They'll be able to play free. Think of all of the times back in the 80s and 90s when BYU was just becoming the BYU that we know today. The idea that they could go anywhere across the country. They could play number 1 Miami. They could play number 3 Pitt. They could play anybody. And BYU was going to be able to play loose, play free because, well, they had nothing to lose. It was the other guys. It was the big dogs who had the pressure. And BYU was this lowly whack team that had nothing to lose because the worst case is that they lost, just like everybody expected them to. Best case, they pull off big upsets. And BYU pulled off big upsets again and again and again. Now the tables have been turned. BYU is the big dog. They're in the power conference, and it's Sam Houston State who has nothing to lose. BYU made a reputation of upsetting teams that they maybe shouldn't have beaten because they were playing loose, playing free. Sam Houston State, they're the ones with that opportunity going into LaVell Edwards Stadium, threatening BYU and their first game as a big dog. The depth chart is fluid. That's another threat. There's still uncertainty. Now, maybe this is coaches using it as a motivational tool, but there are 19 oars on that depth chart. There's still a lot of question marks that need to be sorted through. I don't love having that many question marks going into game 1. I think some of those question marks are maybe not as question marky as they seem, and it's coaches playing mind games with players, trolling fans, whatever it is. But there is some fluidity to the depth chart. And so you're still going to have guys looking over their shoulders. If they make a mistake, are they getting replaced? That's something that BYU is going to have to watch out for as the game goes on. And then finally, Sam Houston State. I get that they're an FCS moving to the FBS level for the first time. They're not a Power 5 school. They're not a dominant school. BYU should win this game handily. However, Sam Houston State's linebackers are very, very good. Really, their whole front seven is good. They've got a couple of guys, Markel Perry, particularly off the edge, who are very, very good as defensive ends. But their linebackers, they may have the best linebacking core in Conference USA, and they just showed up. They just got to Conference USA a month ago. So this is a pretty big deal. This linebacker group can disrupt what BYU wants to do. They shouldn't. I mean, that should be the area that I think Aaron Roderick is going to make sure that his group is prepared to adjust, prepared to protect Keaton Slovis from. The linebackers pop out on tape. If I can see it, so can Aaron Roderick. And so the game plan will account for that. However, these linebackers are good enough that, yeah, BYU could have some things thrown off because of excellent linebacker play from Sam Houston State. So there it is, folks. I mean, at the end of the day, BYU should win this game, like I say, by at least 3 scores. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I don't think this is a 50-0 type of a game. Sam Houston State, they've got too many athletes. They're too good on defense. KC Keeler is a very good coach. That this game, if it's a 20, 24-point win for BYU, that's a pretty solid performance. A lot of people, I asked a question on X earlier this week of, hey, what are you expecting? What will make you satisfied and happy with BYU on Saturday? And people are like, hey, no, it's got to be a 50-point win. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, even Texas A&M, and I get it, Texas A&M wasn't great last year. They dominated their game against Sam Houston State. It was never close. It was never in doubt. But it was 31-0. I mean, it was a dominating defensive performance, but the offense only mustered 31 points. They kept that game relatively close. BYU, I expect a similar type of performance. BYU to win by 24. Maybe they stretch it into the 30s. It's a dominating win. BYU, I don't think will ever be in question of losing this game, but I think this game will be close. This is not playing Southern Utah. This is not a game against Utah Tech or Savannah State where BYU is going to hang 70. I just don't see that being the case. I think this one is going to be closer, into like the 35-14 type of a game. A nice solid win that nobody is worried about, but maybe not a dominating win like fans are expecting. I'm excited about it. We're a couple of days away. Really excited for the content that we have rolling out this week. Appreciate you guys tuning into the Daily Dose, spending some time with me today. Thank you so much. We're just a few days away from kickoff. And until then, give them hell.